So that was the beginning. That was the beginning.
Yeah.
And I started out as they had me teaching English and then Spanish. And so I go, English? I had great English teachers at grammar school and high school.
Mm-hmm.
I had great English teachers in college. And so, yeah, I was able to teach them. Oh, God, it was brutal. Oh, English teachers it's the toughest job.
Do you remember your books that you had to go through?
No one goes through more agony and pain than English teachers. I mean,
that's why I think we go through 3 English teachers a year. I remember my first year here, I had 3 English teachers because our guy, oh God, what was his name? Oh, it was like Mr.
Strauss?
Hunter or something?
No.
Oh my God, he kind of looked like Profe, but a little shorter and spectacled.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, oh man, it was like Rouse or something.
Strauss? No, it was a Latino?
No, he was a white guy. He taught in
Tall?
China.
He taught in China. Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, he was a great teacher.
He was a great guy. His name was Patrick something. And I have every once in a while he sends me a text. And,
oh yeah?
And his wife, he was teaching English in China.
Right.
And he met his wife there. And then he was thinking about coming back here and reestablishing himself and bringing his wife out. And things were getting a little complicated back in China, and so he left to go back home. And honestly, he was making more money in China too. So
okay.
So he was a really good guy. Really
yeah, he was a great teacher.
Yeah.
He got me interested in English and English language. The only thing I didn't like reading Catcher in the Rye.
Yeah, well, you know what? If you can teach English, you go to Europe,
yeah.
Asia, a lot of places make great money and have a great experience living overseas.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and then I think we had Mr. White for a while and Mr. Bruce. They
Mr.
both
White,
subbed.
Mr. Bruce had to fill in. Yeah. I've had to fill in before too. I had to cover philosophy class. I had to cover religion.
When did we have philosophy class here?
A while back.
Damn, what happened?
The kids didn't really appreciate it. They just, it was really, I mean, there's kids who could be AP kids if they wanted to be, but they didn't want to work that hard. Mm-hmm. Those are kids taking the philosophy class, and they were like, well.
Yeah, why do I have to get through Descartes' meditation?
Then we had a psychology class, and I taught that another semester. I mean, I had to relieve the teacher because the teacher was ill, so I had to teach that for another semester. So while I was AD.
Yeah.
So it was interesting.
So what led you to history eventually?
I love history.
Yeah.
I love history. I've always loved history. Whenever I was in elementary school and I had to do a book report, it was always on something historical, like the movie 300. I did it on. I did it on the Battle of Thermopylae.
Oh, of course.
I did
King Leonidas.
Yeah, King Leonidas.
Spartans, holding the line.
Yeah, I did it on Jim Bridger. I did it on. I wrote book reports on all kinds of stuff that I like. Mountain Men.
Yep.
I read a book on a horse called Comanche. He was the horse that belonged to. It was Comanche. He was a horse that belonged to Captain Miles Keogh. Mm-hmm. Miles Keogh was an Irishman, but he was in the British military, and I believe he fought in the Civil War on the Union side. So he remained in the cavalry. Mm-hmm. Well, he remained in the military and he went cavalry. He's always a cavalry officer, if I remember correctly, and he was part of the 7th Cavalry mm-hmm. that Custer commanded, and so he was killed at the Battle of Little Bighorn.
Oh wow!
With Custer, Miles Keogh, and the only survivor was his horse. And
really?
Comanche. And I read about.
Oh wow!
And so Comanche was the mascot after that, and was treated with honors for surviving the battle.
Wow, that's really cool.
He was. In fact, they were going to put the horse down. He was so badly wounded, but they knew whose horse it was, and he was pretty much a Mustang. Mm-hmm. He was an Indian horse, is what it was, a Mustang, and
only one man could tame him.
Well, he was a great horse.
Alexander the Great and his horse.
I believe when he passed, I believe they had him stuffed. I believe he's in the museum. Someone's got to.
They had him stuffed.
No, they did. They did. They had him stuffed and put in the museum.
Well, you can go see Comanche and the Smithsonian.
So he might be somewhere.
Pet him just like
So I believe they had him stuffed, so don't quote me on this.
Okay, fair enough.
But
No, maybe there is no taxidermy of Comanche.
no.
Probably.
He probably is somewhere. But those are the kind of books I like to read and write about because I could relate to them, or they related to me rather. So it wasn't like I got to college and started really experiencing some great books and really enjoying reading for the sake of reading.
You know, it's strange. It hits people late sometimes.
It does.
Like I've been trying to get my boys to read for years, and I know it's almost like a highbrow, like, oh, you should read this book. It's like, no, this will change your life, man.
In my philosophy class, and this professor was putting me to sleep.
Yeah.
I wasn't ready for him.
More common than not in philosophy class.
But we had a book to read. It was Machiavelli's The Prince. And I ate that book up. Oh, I loved it. I go, this guy is good. He's brutal. Boy, and I got to believe that the mafioso leaders must have been inspired by Machiavelli.
Yeah. Oh, man. That was the first book you really got into in college, huh?
Yeah.
But, obviously you had a history of reading. You're doing all your book reports on, biographies of these old
when I got
historians.
When I got Dr. Verge, I got to read some really great books dealing with the Southwest and Mexico and Mexican-American War and things like that. And
what was the curriculum in was it Dr. Verge?
Dr. Verge.
Yeah.
Well, he had two classes, and they were the history of Latin America one, I believe it was, and I think the other one was two. And so it covered all kinds of things. It talked about the revolutions against Spain.
Talk about American insurgency operations in Latin America.
Well, we didn't get that far.
Oh, you didn't get that far?
No,
you didn't cover that in two?
We didn't get to the 20th century. We were mainly in the everything before the end of the 19th century. So
I recently I watched I love podcasts. Hence the the get up. And I listened to a podcast by a guy named Graham Hancock. Have you ever heard of Graham Hancock?
Graham Hancock.
He kind of an out there kind of thinker, but he proposed a theory, I think in the early 90s, that civilization actually goes a lot farther back than the cradle of civilization in Mesopotamia and in between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. And he believed, based on certain evidence he saw, as a journalist, not as a scientist, that there was a cataclysm that had wiped out or hit the reset button on humanity and brought us back to the Stone Age. And only until recently was vilified by the scientific community and ridiculed. How ridiculous, human. We know this is a fact. Writing started in cuneiform in the whatever valley in Mesopotamia, but recently it's come out that around 12,000 or 13,000 years ago there was an impact that hit the planet, and it warmed. It started a period of drastic global warming, so that while kind of large land masses were submerged. And it like hit the reset button on the world. The giant sloth, the short-snouted bear, saber-toothed tiger, all of these animals died out, supposedly, by overhunting. That was always the story, right? That humans just killed them all. Same thing with mammoths, right? But what this cataclysm theory proposes is that it wiped them out.
Is it talking about the meteor that landed perhaps in the Gulf of Mexico?
Yes,
alluding to? Yeah.
In the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah.
And they actually, it was discovered independently by a team of scientists because they had been looking for meteorite impacts because they had found evidence in the mountains of Nepal or something like that of these little superheated teardrop-shaped pieces of obsidian. Maybe not obsidian, but it looks like obsidian. It's a little black.
It's probably
mineral.
obsidian, yeah.
So, and the theory is that when the meteorite hit, all the dust and the dirt hit the upper atmosphere, and as it fell, it condensed and burned. And when the clumps condensed, it turned into these little teardrop-shaped things.
Yeah.
And they started measuring it in different places in the world, and they got closer and closer until they hit the American coast, and then they were getting crazy amounts of these little teardrop-shaped things until the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah, and they believe that that's what did reset everything, so
Yeah.
to speak. We talk about the beginnings of civilization occurring somewhere around. They said about 10,000 years
10,000,
ago, but
yeah.
now they're going maybe 10 to 15,000 years ago. So
Well, they keep having to push the date back.
yeah,
Because
more and more is being discovered and uncovered and explained, and there's so many interesting things that occurred that we're becoming aware of now. So
I recently took 2 back-to-back anthropology classes.
oh, that's a great class.
I have
love
never
that.
been so taken
Yeah.
with a subject like anthropology. It is so fascinating and interesting. Like it just your curiosity is never satiated.
Yeah.
You find out about Australopithecus, like
Robustus
Afarensis,
or whatever, yeah.
and like all of these
Hominids.
Hominids, yeah.
Hominids,
Walking apes for the layman. And it was just fascinating.
Yeah, I took several classes of anthropology and one in cultural anthropology. And
Other than you, the best teacher I've ever had in my entire life,
yeah,
Professor John Denman. He teaches part-time at SMC and part-time at Long Beach Community College.
I had,
Incredible
like
guy.
I see, Dr. Verge was, I had Mr. Gabriel here at St. Monica's, and then Dr. Verge at SMC, and then the 2 teachers. I had a teacher. One teacher, I think it was Dr. Evans, taught geology, and that was an amazing class. And then my art history teacher, and that was an amazing class. And then when I went to Northridge, I had like 5 or 6 teachers that were like, the light went on. It wasn't about regurgitating, memorizing facts. It was actually about, analytical thought, critical thinking, analysis, cause and effect. And I had this teacher. It was a literature class of Latin America, and the man teaching was Spaniard, tall. And he kind of looked the way I imagined Cortez would look, He had a goatee like this, and he had black hair, and he was an ex-Jesuit. And he was so intimidating. His name was Perez Sandoval. He didn't have a first name. It wasn't like Pablo or anything like that. It was Perez Sandoval.
So he's one of the guys that the South Americans or the Aztecs would have hit their knees and started worshiping.
Yeah,
They thought the next coming of Quetzalcoatl.
Yeah, they would have thought he was the return. But he was a great teacher, and that's where the light turned on. And I realized it's not about memorizing or regurgitating, it's about actually having an opinion or a thought or a comment. And so I had some great teachers along the way, great moments with great teachers along the way in a class. So my favorite class of all time, though, is still my art history class at SMC.
Modern history.
No, art history.
Art history, yeah.
I loved it. That was
It's funny how SMC is the venue for
a
these
great school. It's a
unbelievably great teachers.
Like it is. It's a great school. They do a great job.
Although
everyone I know that goes there has gone there when I went, and a lot of kids that could have gone to other schools went there and got a great education and transferred to a lot of other schools. So it's a great place to grow up. It didn't cost an arm and a leg, and
it doesn't. It's so cheap. It's affordable. They help you with financial aid. Great school.
Great school. They do a great job. So,
I mean, I think everybody at St. Monica's used to kind of when I was here, we used to kind of poo-poo it.
Oh yeah,
we call it St. Monica Continued, right?
No, SMC, St. Monica's Continuation.
Continuation, exactly.
We also called it Harvard by the Sea or Pico Tech.
Pico Tech.
But you'd go to St. Monica's, and kids who were in honors and AP classes were at SMC.
The scholars program, yep.
Yeah. Well, no, they didn't have a scholars program.
Not yet. Yeah.
No, but they were there. And they weren't ready to leave home yet, or mom and dad weren't ready to let them leave home.
Yeah.
So they all went to SMC, and then after 2 years, they matriculated out and went to other places. But a lot of us that went there got a great education, and when we went to when we transferred out, we realized how well they prepared us. And Dr. Tony Rose, remember him? Mm-hmm. Okay. He went to SMC, then went to the University of Oregon, and he said SMC, prepared him. It was because they take no prisoners there.
They do not.
They if you can't handle it, you don't do the work.
In my experience, I've had two types of classes at SMC. either the holy shit, I can't believe I'm in this, and I can't believe it's this good, and the holy shit, I gotta get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
I gotta get the hell out of here because my teacher does not know what he or she's talking about.
Well, this Dr. Evans in the geology class, we used his own book. And I was in there with a couple of guys who were ranked higher than I was out of high school. And when all three of us were excited when we got a C on our test. We're going, yes! And I go, I got the same grade they did. I'm in good shape. So, yeah.
Those are the best classes. The ones where you're just hanging on by a thread and you got to put in those extra 5 hours of studying.
I took a PE class every semester. So I had a baseball class, an archery class.
Archery?
Yeah.
I wonder if they still do archery.
A golf class, what was the class called? It encompassed a lot of running and weightlifting. It was, I forget the name of the class, but we were running a lot around the track and lifting a lot. So it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. It was a great break. It was a great break from the routine.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What would you think if we made an institution like SMC or other community colleges, or maybe every community college in the country, free and available to people, and maybe they just take an extra 20 cents out of your paycheck for your taxes?
Yeah, I think.
Have you thought about?
Yeah, I think that community colleges is going to be the way for a lot of American kids, especially in California, that are going to get an opportunity to go to a state school. I think that community college should be free. Just like public schools are free.
Yep.
I think that state colleges should be supplemented in a way so that we can.
At least not $40K a year.
Yeah, $40K probably pretty cheap, but I got some kids that are going to school that 60 grand to 65. I'm going, oh my God.
It's a nightmare.
And that's just a BA. So yeah, I mean, if you can go to SMC and then go to a state school. So if you went to SMC, I mean, that's eligible. You go to Northridge or Long Beach, it's about maybe 5 to 8 grand.
Yeah.
So you're talking either for 2 years, you're talking maybe 20 grand at the most. So now you can afford to go to grad school and get a master's.
You're not chained to this, institution with this crazy amount of debt that can't be unwiped.
And you know what? I think what employers ought to start doing is paying off, student loans. If after you've shown that you're worth it and you're invested in the company, they're willing to keep you there another couple of years. So we're going to pay off your last 3 years of college, but you can't leave here for another 3 years.
That would be an incredibly sophisticated capitalistic way of getting the right people in your company and keeping them there.
And being invested, they took care of me. They helped pay my college.
Absolutely.
So I owe them. And so you're going to feel that sense of, some people won't. Mm-hmm. They'll go into politics.
People are always telling me I should go into politics. And I want to be able to look myself in the mirror and not hate the person I see.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I feel about it. But you look at a guy like Bernie Sanders. I don't know how you feel about Bernie Sanders. We don't have to go into talk about politics, but he does not hate the person he sees in the mirror.
No, he doesn't. He can sleep at night.
Yeah.
Who he is, and you got to give him credit for that.
Absolutely.
And
you've been keeping up with the Democratic primaries at all?
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting. Today I heard the response to the impeachment document and how it's trying to overthrow an election where the people determine the president, but people fail to talk about the fact that it was electoral college, not the people that elected the president.
Yes.
And it's not the first time. And as long as the electoral college remains in place, it won't be the last time.
2000, right?
Yeah.
George Bush and Al Gore.
Yeah, electoral college. And so ultimately, democracy is a democracy when the electoral college does that, supersedes the popular vote. And with Citizens United, democracy is pretty much, just a word.
Continuously subverted.
Yeah, it is.
Constantly. I'm always talking about this with people, and I feel like people don't get it because they don't see it, because, we're not living in Washington, D.C.
But when we get like a 60% turnout, we're excited by that.
Yeah.
The first time Iraq and Afghanistan had elections, they had over 90% turnout with snipers shooting at them at the near the polling booth. And here, I got to pick up my kid, I got to make dinner,
Yeah.
I've got to go back for open house, and so
We're
people
very privileged in the United States.
and we take our democracy for granted. Everybody does. Whether you're blue or you're red, you take it for granted.
Joe Rogan has a great joke on one of his specials on Netflix. Do you know Joe Rogan?
Yeah.
I fucking love the guy. He's like my idol. I listen to every podcast. I'm always trying to learn from him. He's an incredible guy. He has this joke. It's like, people are always talking about the long and glorious history of the United States. It's like, long and glorious history. You know how long this shit has been around? Think about how long one person can live. Let's say 100 years. The United States was around 300 years. That's 3 people, bro! We've been here in no time whatsoever. So if you think that shit that those guys wrote 300 years ago is going to apply today because of this long and glorious and infallible history,
Yeah.
you took Thomas Jefferson, you brought him back today, and he took a look at our government and how things are going, he'd be like, dude, you didn't write any new stuff? Like, what do you mean amendments? Wait, that's it?
We have 27 of them.
Yeah, right.
Tom.
Chill, Tom. All right, go back to the.
By the way,
go back to your
Tom,
plantation.
this summer there'll be a reunion of the Jeffersons. Half of them are white, and the other half are black, and they're all related to you.
I wasn't gonna get into that. I almost said go back to the barn, but that might have been in poor taste.
But nevertheless, yeah.
They denied the other half of the family for a long time. They wouldn't let him come.
Years ago, I read an article in the magazine where this woman, her last name was Jefferson, Caucasian woman, and she had a son, and it was just her and her son and no other family. And he was always sad as a boy because he had no cousins. Mm. And so she found out about the Jefferson family reunion.
Oh, wow.
And it was back, it could have been in Mississippi, Alabama, somewhere.
Somewhere.
Yeah, it wasn't in Virginia, I don't believe. I could be wrong. In any case, so she shows up, and it's all African Americans that are there, the Jeffersons, and they're amazed that this blonde woman and her blind child show up, and they talk about being Jeffersons and how they have no family, and so they embraced them and brought them in.
Of course they did.
And so on an annual basis, the family, the mother and the son were going back, and he now had cousins and aunties and uncles.
Oh,
and this little boy was so happy. It was a great story.
That is a great
It's a great story about how history
it can bring us together.
bring people together and maybe in a small way show the stupidity of racism and slavery and the hypocrisy of slavery. Really, to call it stupid is.
I mean, there were so many justifications. I remember learning about it in your class. They would take the Bible and say, well, the Bible tells you how much you should sell a slave for. It tells you the ways in which, in Deuteronomy, in Numbers, all of these things, they all have these passages that are like, well, of course the we don't have to get into religion. We certainly don't have to, because this is a Catholic institution, and I do not want to besmirch the name, the good name of St. Monica's, but some of that stuff in the Old Testament is. I love the message of Jesus. I think the message of Jesus is a beautiful one. Do unto others as you would have them do to you. That, if there is a
Hold on,
sentence...
my phone's ringing.
Yeah.
No. I'm going to pretend I have my phone. I'm going to talk to Chewy. Okay, so... ¿Qué pues, Chewy? How's Mom and Pop? Yeah? How's Peter doing? He's still by the gate, huh? All right. How about Paul? He sleeps upside down, even though he's in heaven? Wow, wow, that's great. That's great. How about my mom and dad? How they doing? Oh, they're partying with my uncles and my aunts, my brother. But he's having some shots of tequila with my cousins. That's great. That's good.
They got tequila in
I
heaven?
tell him, I said, gee, Jesus, Jesus, like, you know that wine at the wedding in
Oh, that's
Cana?
true. Jesus
It
knew
was-
how to party.
It was mezcal. He goes, wine? I want to give them some mezcal. And that fish was ceviche. And yeah, Jesus had a sense of humor. I heard this a long time ago. He said on the seventh day, when he was done, he had a couple of parts bins, and he took the tail from the beaver, he took the bill from the duck, and he created the platypus.
Truly an unmatched creator and designer.
But he used everything. He didn't waste it. You know, it was upcycled.
Oh my God! Did he make that goblin shark too? That thing with the curled jaw?
Oh my God! Okay. Well, you know
Some
what?
of these things in nature are hideous.
Well, he had to create something for us to laugh at, you know,
Yeah.
other than ourselves.
The greatest joke of all.
Yeah, it was creation.
Oh my God, that was fucking funny. Hey Chewy.
Hey, Chewy, yeah. And so, I mean, I had an uncle. Been through a lot in his life. My mom's brothers, my aunts, they were very, very, very dogmatic, very religious. Mm-hmm. And my uncle's been through he had been through a lot of pain with his children and the choices they made and the things that happened to them. And I had been visiting his daughter and his granddaughter, my goddaughter, and she was dying from Hodgkin's disease. And when I went back to his place, my mom, my wife, and my son were playing cards with my aunt. My aunt was a lot of fun to play cards with, and Pokino and all kinds of games. Mm-hmm. And so I could hear my son and my mom and my wife just laughing. And my aunt, she had a great laugh. And I come walking in, I go, hey, where's Theo at? Theo, by the way, for those who don't speak Spanish, means uncle. And they said, oh, he's in the backyard.
I'm sure most people listening to this know what Theo means, and if they don't, feel bad for him.
So here's a man who he had a lot of tragedy in his life. He was in love with a white girl when he was in middle school, in high school, I think it was. And I believe her name was Barbara. And they were in love. And when her parents found out that she was dating a Mexican, they sent her back to Nebraska. And they never saw each other again.
Talk about an overreaction.
She called after her husband had died. She was back in California and got my mom's number from friends in Santa Monica and wanted to know about my uncle. She said, well, you know, he's married and he's got a family. And this is about maybe 5 years from my uncle passed.
Wow.
And after my aunt passed away, my uncle could come down to visit. And my mom told him about how she tried to reach him. And my uncle was still heartbroken from my aunt's death. So about a year or so before my uncle passed away, he came down and he wanted to know if I could find that number of his friend, Barbara. My mom had Alzheimer's, and she was in a facility and couldn't find the number. And so my uncle died about a year after that, and he was never able to reconcile with Barbara. And that's just one example of how his life started out, and it was painful for him. But I went back outside to talk to my uncle. And he lost 2 sons, and his granddaughter was going to pass away. And he had some heart issues. And I asked him, you know, with all the pain and agony you've been through in your life, he was very religious. Mm-hmm. He was creating a cross, a crucifix topiary at the church around the Vita de Guadalupe,
wow.
His church. And he'd get there at 6 o'clock in the morning, and he'd pray, and mass would come and go, and he'd be there until 10 o'clock praying a rosary. So when he said, Theo, with all the pain you've been through, don't you ever get mad at God sometimes? I mean, I know a lot of people that get mad at God. And he goes, yeah, there's times where I come out here and lo echo los madres. And in Spanish, los madres is when you say mother, you use really vulgar language. And I'm going, and he turns his back to me as he said that. And I'm thinking my uncle's going to die. He's going to go to hell. I thought this in my mind, right? And he turns around, and here's a man with probably a 9th grade education. He says, but you know what? You can do that to your friend, your best friend. So here's a man who wasn't a theologian, but he acknowledged he had a relationship with God, that Jesus was his Savior, and that he could get pissed off, and that his friend would forgive him, and he was cool with that. So he had a very personal relationship. So
That's beautiful.
I've shared that story a couple of times because it's a profound story for us to all recognize who our Maker is and to acknowledge our Maker, whoever that may be.
Yeah.
I mean, we're Catholic school, but, you know, we're barely a majority of Catholics. We have Buddhists, we have Baha'i, we have Muslim, we have Shiite and Sunni Muslim, we have Jewish kids, all the Protestant denominations, we have Mormon, we have everything.
Yeah.
And they're all treated like brothers and sisters.
Same thing when I was here.
Yep, same way, nothing's changed. And that's what makes us really an outstanding place to come and get a great education, to grow up.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up here. Renato Moreno, who's a police officer at Beverly Hills. He came here and he grew up here. Your dad, you grew up here. My son, and now my son's son, growing up here.
There's a very deep community appreciation of this place.
There is. It goes deep. It does
It is
go deep.
beloved.
Yeah.
Like, there's so much respect. Yeah, I mean,
We have a lot of heart.
Yeah, we do.
We have a lot
We're
of
not
heart.
a big school, but we kick a lot of ass.
Yeah, you know, there are times we get our butts kicked.
Absolutely.
But you know what? We don't quit.
Never.
And we have a lot of heart. And the bottom line is that as the kids begin to mature, they begin to relate to each other in a much more compassionate way, and they pray for people. And the great thing about being here is that we get to pray. I didn't think that was a big deal because I went to Catholic school all my life, but I realized about 20 years ago, I'm so grateful, 25 years ago, that I got to pray. As my father was dying, when my brother died, my mom with Alzheimer's, my wife with health issues, and other family members and friends. I'm grateful I get to pray. I get to pray 4 to 5 different times a day. And I like it. I like it.
You know, what always interested me about prayer, I never really got into it personally, but I always felt comforted when it came on, because whenever we would say, what's it called, St. Monica, pray for us, and people would just kind of talk about different things, and they'd say, for my uncle,
Yeah.
for my dog, for whatever.
My mom, she's having surgery.
Exactly. And you would get these insights into your friends' lives that you never knew, you never
Because
heard.
this kid who would never pay attention during prayer, suddenly he's asking for a prayer for his loved one.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's a great thing. It's a great opportunity.
It developed deeper connections with everyone, because
With
we're
everybody.
like, hey man, what's going on? What's going on at home? Do you need someone to talk to? Let's go hang out after school, take your mind off things.
I can't tell you all the time students have come up to me or other teachers and say, hey, there's a problem with so-and-so. You need to talk to him. You need to talk to her. And there's always a teacher that a student goes to. And that teacher goes to that student and say, hey, are you okay? And you find out that this kid's going through a lot. I mean, there was a kid who graduated 3 years ago. It was him and his mom living in a bachelor apartment over in far side of Downey. Mm-hmm. So he'd have to get up at 3:30 to catch a bus at 4:30 to get to school, and he would always have a tough time getting here on time, and he could never be a part of after school activities because he would get home extremely late, and he'd have to catch several buses. This is before the metro went through, and he wanted to be a doctor, and he could never take his finals on time because money was an issue. And he was always taking his finals, in January and in July. Mm-hmm. And he was a brilliant young man, very talented. He wasn't the kind of kid that felt sorry for himself. He
just knew he had it hard and he had to work through it.
He did, and I haven't seen him in a while. I hope he's doing well. But I want him to pursue his passion of being a doctor. I know he'd be a great doctor, but I don't think he could afford to get anywhere in debt. I think $40,000 for a BA for him, wow, that sounds cheap, would devastate him. Yeah, it's just him and his mom. So
not to mention after getting his BA, going into medical school,
yeah,
developing.
Let me share a story with you that happened this week.
Yes, please.
So there was a boys basketball game. I believe it was a boys basketball game earlier this week. I believe it might have been Monday or Tuesday. I believe. I'm not sure on the date. And the athletic director, Mr. Frank Cruz, a graduate, he was getting ready to lock up the gym when he goes into the gym, and the gym is filthy. And there's a student who's in the gym, and she's cleaning the gym up by herself. And I believe he asked her, "What are you doing?" She said, "Well, I'm cleaning up the gym." And she was cleaning up the gym. And she cleaned it up all by herself. She wasn't told to, she didn't have to, and she wasn't doing it to get attention. So he notified us about this young lady. And this young lady was recognized yesterday at the pep rally for what she had done.
Oh.
And Mark Verge, who was, when I was athletic director, his brother-in-law, and they weren't brother-in-laws yet, I don't think, Chow, I forget his first name. So Mark Verge and his future brother-in-law were my water polo coaches. And so anyways, Mark Verge is a great entrepreneur, and he's a great St. Monica story. And he shows up, and he gives Penny, her name is Penny Thompson, and he pays for the rest of her tuition for the rest of the year.
Oh my God.
And she didn't do it for anything other than, this place is filthy, I'm gonna clean it up.
Yeah.
And she just exemplified what's best about St. Monica's kids.
Oh my God.
Not every St. Monica kid's like that, but there's a lot more like that than we realize. And
wow.
it was a great thing, and I'm sure someone realized we got to do something for this outstanding young lady, and she was recognized in front of the whole school, and they were in shock the fact that this kid would do that. And then when he gave her this basically a scholarship to pay for tuition, they were like, "Wow, this is amazing." So
Incredible.
here's a Mariner doing the Mariner thing, being rewarded by a Mariner who did the Mariner thing. So that's what makes St.
It all
Monica
comes
rock.
back around.
St. Monica rocks.
That's the thing about investing in this community. It constantly creates more and more like wealth, more and more worth.
Yeah.
You know, what do you call it? GDP, whatever you want to call it, and
Yeah.
it always gets invested back in this.
It always does. It always does. And people who grew up here, going back to the early days, I mean, they realize what a special place this school truly is. And I know a lot of people believe that in their own high school. And I can't speak to that.
Yeah.
But I think all of us who go to school here, very few people walk out here feeling like I didn't connect. It does happen. I've known people who didn't feel like they connected much. But it's really, you have to accept the responsibility to be engaged and put yourself out there when you're in high school.
Yeah.
It's tough when you're a freshman. It's a little easier when you're a sophomore. When you're a junior, there's no reason why you shouldn't, you know. And the kids that do that, they get so much more out of their experience here, especially their last 2 years. Mm-hmm. So they grow and they become better and more well-rounded because of that. So. St. Monica.
This is a great place.
It is a great place.
They're going to put that on the website, Mr. Rod. They're going to find this online. So one of your students is going to take that little clip and he's going to show it to, oh my God, what's the principal's name?
Mr. Spellman.
Mr. Spellman. Bring it up to Mr. Spellman. His white ponytail is going to be swaying in the wind.
No, that's Mr. No.
Oh, did I confuse him?
The principal's Mr. Spellman. The president is Mr. McCardle.
Oh,
Kevin McCardle.
I apologize.
McCardle.
I don't know if I've
He
had
was
the
there.
pleasure.
They both were there. So one of those two, or both of them, were responsible for probably contacting Mark, I believe.
Awesome.
So that was a great thing. That was a great thing to
Yeah.
do for that child, and to acknowledge her in front of everybody, and for that family to find out that their daughter did something that demonstrated great character and great citizenship. And she happened to get a reward for it just because she was just doing the right thing.
Just because somebody happened to come in, happened to see her doing that.
And if,
you know?
and if Mr. Cruz had come in afterwards, he wouldn't have realized that she had cleaned it up. He would have thought it might have been the janitors.
Yep.
And it never would have happened. It would have been missed. So
What an
we have a
incredible
lot
story.
of kids that do so many things for each other. They have each other's back when things are going on. And so it's a great community. It's a small town community too. So, you know, people can find out your business if you got a big mouth, you know.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
So you know that story. So
I have a few stories of my own big mouth getting myself and my family into trouble over shit I shouldn't have talked about. So
Yeah, it happens. It happens. It happens.
we're in such close proximity. We're all Santa Monica, or we're mid-city. We're all big family.
Well, I had interaction with three Mariners today.
Uh-huh.
Okay, Eric Diaz. So you need to know about Eric Diaz. Hopefully he sees this. His mom, Rosa Diaz, worked in the snack bar. His older brother Alvaro was one of my students. Then Eric, who's in my son's class, was one of my students. Then his younger sister Jackie, one of my students, and played softball for me.
Rosa used to always hook me up with an extra chicken tender.
Yeah.
I would always wait in her line.
Yeah, she's a good lady.
She's the best.
Good lady. So is Lucy. They're all good ladies. They're wonderful people. And so Alvaro didn't necessarily work as hard as he should have, but he enjoyed high school. Mm-hmm. And his mom made him get a job and made him get good grades. He transferred from SMC to UCLA.
Nice.
Got his BA from UCLA in business. Then he went to University of Texas in Arlington, got his master's in business and lived there for a while.
Wow.
Now he's up in, I think, Oregon or Washington, I think Seattle perhaps. Then Eric had a gardening landscaping business and was at SMC. And I just talked to Eric today. And he was my gardener for a while, and then he's the gardener for my mom's place. And he transferred from SMC to SC, and he ends up applying for a job there on maintenance. So he's getting great money, working 40 hours a week at SC.
Yeah.
He gets their health benefits, their pension, and he gets his BA, I believe, in urban planning and his master's from them in architectural landscaping, all at a reduced rate because he's an employee at the same time he's working full time.
That's incredible.
And so he works full time there, but he's got a business that he works on the weekends. He's going to retire from He's going to retire from SC because it's a great job. His sister, who went straight to Northridge, so she got a job, I think, working in admissions. And after a year or two, she applied, and she's working on her master's now.
Nice.
So you got Rosa Diaz and her husband, born in Mexico. They come here, they have children, and they educate their children through the Catholic school system, and all their children have master's degrees.
Wow.
And so hard work, and the work ethic, and faith, and the fact that mom and dad, especially the mom, Mrs. Diaz didn't cut any slack with them. She was like, and I could see her once in a while, and she'd lay into her boys. With Jackie, she didn't have to. Jackie was a little more self-motivated than the boys were, but they owe a lot to both their parents. But their mom, when she was here, keeping an eye on them and pushing them. She didn't want them to get anything. She wanted them to work for everything they got. And they did. They're good guys. They're doing well. Eric's doing well. Jackie's doing well. So is Alvaro. So, mom and dad did their job. They can sleep at night knowing they did the best thing for their children. They got great children.
That's a common story here.
It is. It's very much so. Very much so.
My dad, his parents, his father was a gardener. Emigrated from Guadalajara.
My dad was a gardener landscaper when I was a little kid. Did some construction work. Then worked for the phone company. That's where he retired from. So go ahead.
No, absolutely. No, it's true though. These common themes, they run in the in Mexican American blood.
Latino blood, really.
Latino blood,
I mean, we could say when I was going to school it was Mexican, but now it's like, no, you got to say Latino because there's so many kids that are Nicaraguan and Mexican or Nicaraguan and El Salvadorian.
Very true. Very true.
And so you got look at Miss Grabal. She's Argentinian, right? I have a couple of kids. I have a kid that's from Ecuador. They're from all over the world.
Yeah, one of my friends, I think he took your class too, Jason Thomas.
Yeah.
He's El Salvadorian.
Okay.
And half black. Kevin Argueta, also El Salvadorian.
Kevin Argueta, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're from all over the place. You're right. I should say Latino.
Hey, we should give a shout out to Henok Tafiri.
Absolutely.
Henok Tafiri was a wonderful, wonderful young man. And it's a huge loss to not only St. Monica's, to his family, the St. Monica's community, but that young man touched so many lives along with his brother and that family, and that the things he would have accomplished as he would have gone through these years and the gifts he would have provided to the world You know, it's a huge loss. It's a tragic loss. Tragic loss.
He was a great guy.
was
One of the
awesome.
few people who get a laugh out of anyone.
Yeah.
It didn't matter if it was a teacher,
Yeah.
if it was a freshman, if it was an elementary school kid. He was the nicest guy.
He was very sincere, very
Yeah.
genuine, you know, and
Great basketball player.
Great basketball player. His brother was his brother was a year or two older than him.
Brooke Teferi?
Brooks, yeah. Brooke, great kid, great kid. He's like
Man.
Yeah, you guys are men now. I keep.
Well, I don't know about me.
kids.
I'm still working on that.
Well, it's strange. Like I saw my former student, you know, Renato Moreno, and the last time I saw him, he had black hair, and now he's got I think two sons. One son in high school, one son in middle school, and he's got gray hair. And I'm going, damn. So whenever I see my students, they got gray hair. I think, damn. I go, they're getting old.
How long have you had the salt and pepper for?
Well, I always had a little bit of gray hair.
Mr. Rod, you're blessed. Your head of hair is
My hair?
beautiful.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
you know,
you got a flowing mane back there.
Nobody in my mom's family is bald.
You look at
Thank
my
God, Mom.
grandfather,
Thank God, Mom.
you look at my dad, they're desert graveyards.
Yeah, no.
Where little like cacti stand out.
Yeah,
Just sucking up moisture.
I got my dad's hairline and my dad's coloring of hair, but my mom didn't. My mom never inherited any genes for baldness. Everybody had a lot of hair, so I'm lucky and blessed for that.
Good hair, good beard.
Yeah,
Can't go wrong.
yeah. I got the gray hair from Pop. So anyways,
So how many generations of students is that? They're 43 years, 43 years. That's,
well, I started 43 years ago, then I quit.
Right. And then you started your FedEx.
So I've actually taught for 34, but 33 here.
Right.
So, well,
How does it feel? I mean, you've had a hand in all
I've
of these
taught
people's lives.
I've
It's
taught
crazy.
I've taught teachers who work here.
Really?
Yeah,
Who did you teach?
Mike Wagner,
Oh my God.
Ms. Gerbal, Mr. Mayer. I taught his brother as well.
Yeah.
His mom and dad were, I think, 2 grades below me, and I think they were in my brother's class. I think my brother Joe's class.
I don't know if he still teaches here, but Paul. God, I don't remember Paul's last name, but I think he was a math teacher here for a bit. He was a year after 3 years older than I was. God, I don't remember his last name. It was like Paul Aaron or something like that. And I know because I saw an Instagram story, I think 1 or 2 years ago, after he got his either master's or doctorate. He's like, I'm going for my first day to teach at St. Monica's. And I'm pretty
Paul Fisher?
Paul Fisher.
Yeah.
Exactly, of
Yeah,
course. I love Paul.
Yeah, he left us,
Great
and
guitar
then
player.
came back, and then he left us again in June.
Okay, sorry, Paul.
So he's gone. Yeah, Paul.
I love Paul.
And
I
when
had
he started
Paul
teaching-
in my music class with Mr. Archer.
When he started teaching, they had closed down the West Wing for remodeling. So I was teaching in the basement of the East Wing, across from Paul. And so I would work with Paul because he hadn't been a teacher, and I gave him some insights and things like that. And I was always, running things by him because, that's the thing a veteran teacher does. Like Miss McNally would do that. Like right now, you got Miss Salisbury. All right, she's a veteran teacher. I mean, veteran teachers always share their experiences of what to do and not to do and how to do it. But it helps. For me, what helped me is teaching freshmen, because then, by the time
saw
the
the worst of
seniors,
the worst.
I knew everybody. The only kids I didn't know that well were the kids in honors.
In honors, yeah.
So there's always, but I try to get to know them around the school.
Stupid smart
Or maybe
kids.
I coach them. But
Taking an honors class, missing the real life lessons in Mr. Rod's class.
About 10 or 15 kids out of the entire school that I didn't teach or really know. And so, it was nice knowing everybody. You could you know who to joke with. Like even now I'll go to someone and go, "How are your grades doing?" So I'm doing okay. What do you mean doing okay? I'm missing some homework in English. I go, "You talk to your teacher?" I go, "Well, yeah, but I don't think she'll talk to her. Tell her you don't expect full credit back, and and if you don't turn anything else in, then don't ever ask her again."
Yeah.
Or him. And so I do stuff like that. I like checking in on kids. It's like,
You always checked on me and the boys.
yeah, I had to.
Of course.
But
We'd
you know
always come
what?
visit you.
I've got some kids right now. I got one kid, and her dad and her cousins and her uncles were guys I all kept an eye on. But they had a good heart. They had a good heart. They were good guys, very respectful. They represented St. Monica as well. They played sports. They loved being here at St. Monica's. They really loved it. And they married their high school sweethearts.
Aww.
And they're related to so I can't tell you. I mean, we have a lot of Padillas, and I don't think there's three branches of Padillas, but I don't think you guys are related to each other.
We're not. None of us are related.
Okay.
Except my godfather is one of the other Padillas.
Oh, really?
And his son Rafe went here.
Okay.
Rafael Padilla.
Okay, Rafe. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and then
I think
there's a lot of Gonzaleses. A lot of Gonzaleses, and they're all related. Most of them are related to, when you find out they're not, it's like the anomaly. You have a lot of siblings that have gone through here. You remember Mr. Ambrose?
Strambrice? No.
Thomas Ambrose? No? Well, he was a student of mine. Mm-hmm. And his sister was too. And then she married a classmate. And I knew that classmate's father and uncles and his father's cousins. I went to school with the father's cousins, and I worked with them when I was working at a market. And so it goes back a ways, man. It goes back a ways. I mean, my dad was from West LA, my mom was from Santa Monica, so my dad knew the Cruzes, the Canos, the Herreras, the Holguins. My mom knew I'm thinking of the names, the Wrangles, the
Anglers?
Galvins. No, not the Anglers. The Galvanas.
Shout out to the Anglers.
The Marquez, the Mesas. And so my mom knew all these people. And so, oh yeah, I know them. I know them. My dad would say, he knows them too. And so when I was here, there was only one school to send your kids to. It was St. Monica's. There were kids who decided to go to St. Bernard's, but they weren't
the system of their lives.
Yeah, they weren't cut out to be.
We're always talking mad crap about St. Bernard's.
Well, St. Bernard's is our true crosstown rival. It's like UCLA and SC.
It absolutely is.
And so
fierce.
My wife
went
to St. Bernard's, so she's going to heaven now because she married a Marin.
Oh, thank God!
Okay, all right.
She almost missed it.
She almost
just barely
missed it.
by a hair.
Yeah, and my wife's sister married my brother, so she's going to heaven too because he went to St. Monica's. And then the other sister married another Mariner, so she's
funny
going to
how
heaven.
that works.
So he's got her youngest brother. Graduated from St. Bernard, so and he didn't marry anybody from St. Oh, I take it back. You said his children here. He's going to heaven.
He's going to heaven.
All right.
He got his golden ticket in there.
His children are mariners, so he's going to heaven. He's got his golden ticket. Yeah. Let's stop by Willy Wonka's chocolate factory and grab that ticket.
Oh yeah, he's going to sail on the chocolate river through St. Peter's Gate.
Yeah. Now, do you remember Sister
Gates.
Dennis?
Of course.
Well, Sister Dennis taught at St. Bernard's. I remember once at a party, I was saying, well, I'm glad Sister Dennis is at St. Monica's because even though she taught at St. Bernard's and she's a nun, she will go to heaven now. and my friends are hitting me. She's a nun. She's going to heaven anyways. My Sister Dennis was awesome. I've been blessed to have incredible women in my life. My grandmother, my mom's sister, my Tia Lupe, my mother, my wife, my mother-in-law who treated me like a son, my wife's sisters who were awesome women, treating me just like a brother, and Sister Dennis. Sister Dennis was like my mom away from home. She was my supervisor, my boss, but she always kept an eye on me, always took care of things, especially when my wife was ill. She always wanted to know how my son was doing, how my wife was doing, my mom, my dad. And she knew all the things I was going through since the time I came here. My dad's passing, my brother, my mom and her Alzheimer's, and cousins. I mean, all my uncles, all my aunts are gone.
Yeah.
I buried, I think, 5 cousins. And so, we have buried. And so we buried my last uncle right after his birthday, back in late June, early July. And then we buried his youngest son, a year before that. But anyways, that's a little morbid and off the track here. But St. Monica's always been here, and Sister Dennis rocked. I mean, she would whisper. She never raised her voice, and she kept command of that class.
She was razor sharp.
And she was well read.
I never took her class. But.
And no one knew more about sports than Sister Dennis.
Really?
We used to do a football pool all the time, and Sister Dennis was in the top 5, always ahead of the coaches. The football coaches would always overthink it. Sister Dennis would go through, and we always had half the bracket was college, the other half was NFL.
Yeah.
And she always knew the backstory on someone, on a team and their injuries, or the bad week that someone was having. She did her homework. Oh, she knew her stuff, man. Oh, she was remarkable. She was remarkable. You never bet against Sister Dennis.
Never.
And she was a big A's and a big A's and a Raiders fan. And
even after they moved,
you know what? She loved the Raiders.
She always loved the Raiders.
She loved the Raiders. She's from Oakland.
Oh, okay.
And she's Irish. Irish don't give up on their loves like that.
Very true.
They stay with that, and so she did. And Sister Dennis, she's an awesome woman. Awesome woman. I miss her. I miss her a lot. But she's like 90s, in her 90s now. Still as sharp as she was before.
I believe it. I'm surprised she's not still prowling the halls.
And the only reason she quit
telling people
is because of
telling
an
boys to
injury
tuck
she
in their
had.
shirts and
Yeah,
girls to
she
lower
was
their
old
skirts.
school. And that was good. She quit when they told her she needed to use a cane because of her balance. She goes, I will not go into the classroom with a cane. And here I am. I had plantar fasciitis in one leg. I twisted another ankle. And I'm using a cane. I'm going, Sister Dennis is more macho than I am. She quit rather than use a cane. And I'm going,
Oh my God.
Macho woman.
Macho woman.
Macho woman.
Absolutely.
So.
Mr. Rod, I have so many memories of coming to class and just, always being excited because we got a great story every single time. And, I'm not trying to fluff you up or anything, but, I remember the story you told me. And I think we talked about it a couple weeks ago at the homecoming game, or a couple months ago, I should say. And you were talking about when you were young and you used to glean the fields. Do you remember that story? Oh God, I don't.
When I was young, I used to clean Oh, that was my father.
That was your father. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
my father. My father.
Pardon me.
My mother and my father were all of my father's siblings except one were born here. All of my mother's siblings except one were born here, and they came here because of the violence of the Mexican Revolution. So my mother's family were farm workers. My father's family was farm workers. Have you ever seen the movie The Grapes of Wrath with
I spark notes
Henry
it.
Fonda? Well, you got to see it. It's a classic. It's a great movie.
Okay.
And there's a scene there where the Jodes are coming from Oklahoma, and they're trying to get into California, and they're being screened, so to speak. Well, the reality is that agribusiness in California did not want the Arkies and the Okies, the farmers from Oklahoma and Arkansas, to come here because they had Mexican, Filipino, Japanese, and some African Americans who worked the fields in California in those days.
Of course.
They were paying them a different wage. If these white men from Arkansas, Oklahoma came in, they had to pay them a real white man's wage. So the state police kept them out. Ultimately, word got back to Washington. The governor had to take the lid off and let them in, as he should have, because so they couldn't send anybody else out of the country. So they repatriated the Mexicans back to Mexico. And so I think the area of about 3 million of those Mexicans were American-born citizens, like my father, his brother, and his sisters. Okay, they were born. And so for 3 years they struggled and they went hungry in Mexico. And the story I told you, do you want me to repeat it?
Please do.
So my father and his brother, older brother, go to a potato field with their father, my grandfather. And the farm workers already picked the fields. This is somewhere in Mexico. I'm not sure where. And there's nothing left there except the rotten, the wormy, and the smashed potatoes that are left. So my grandfather has a gunny sack, so the three of them are grabbing whatever they can. And mind you, there's worms, and there's
all that
bugs, and
wasn't
it's
picked.
rotten. They had to eat. They were dying of hunger.
Yeah.
And the foreman shows up, the patron shows up, and he takes the gunny sack of potatoes away from my grandfather, and he hit him a couple times, and he puts the gun to his head. And my father, my uncle, they didn't speak English at this time. They were speaking Spanish. That was their first language, even though they were born in the States. And they're pulling on the patron's pants, and they're telling him in Spanish, please don't kill my father, please don't kill my father. So the man kind of reluctantly shoos him off, and then he takes the butt of the gun, and he pistol whips my grandfather. He had the gun to his head, but he pistol whips him, grabs a sack of potatoes that no one's going to eat except people like my dad and his family who are dying of hunger, and he walks away. And so that was a story when my dad talked about, he would get a little emotional at the inhumanity of people, and there was no reason for that patron to do that. These are people who were starving to death. It was going to rot, and but he had a little bit of power. He was a foreman, and so he was going to exercise his power. And had he shot my grandfather, nobody would have said anything. So that's the world we live in to this very day. In other parts of the world, I mean, Africa, Latin America, Asia. I mean, so much is going on that we don't see, and I'll bet there's something akin to that happens here in America. That it's easy to bring it to our attention, but it's difficult to still to stomach it or to see that it's this kind of inhumanity, and I'm not sure what else to call it. Still occurs, and how people starve.
It's this strange prejudice that's persisted, right? I mean, in a time of economic and social prosperity, basically, which is unmatched in any other time in history, you know, even our homeless people have cell phones. Holy crap, that's incredible.
There's more wealth now than ever in the history of the world. Probably, if you went back, 10,000 years and gathered all that wealth, it still wouldn't compare.
But not as much as the Dutch East India Company.
The British East India Company may be close.
Maybe they were like right there.
Yeah. I was teaching the opium war to my kids, and I wanted them to understand. So you have to understand that the first drug war was fought by a country who wanted the rights to sell opium to the Chinese, and the Chinese said no. And the British defeated them, and they got
my God!
So the royalty of England were the biggest drug dealers.
Drug dealers,
yeah. They got permission to deal drugs.
Thank you, House of Windsor. Actually, the House of Windsor.
I don't think that was Windsor.
No,
I think it was Windsor.
It was further back.
It was in the 18 late. It was I think of the Sepoy Rebellion. It was. Probably 1870s, 1880. Oh man, I'm confusing some U.S. history with this. In the late 1800s.
Yeah.
Darn it. But anyways,
has the curriculum changed at all in the last few years, or is it the same as when I went here? Because the book looks pretty similar. If it's not the same book,
the U.S. history book is the same one. The world history book, same publisher, but it's a different edition. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit different. I think government's different. I think AP is different as well.
I made
we have
half a semester.
We have a STEM program.
Mr. Nelson's A-Push.
A-Push.
I was, every night, I would sit in bed and I would just read and read and read. And I take notes and I do everything. I get to class, everybody's ahead of me. It was I couldn't believe how much these kids studied. I'm coming home after football practice. I'm exhausted and all that. And I got other homework to do.
If you're an AP and you're playing a sport, it's really problematic.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it can't be done. It can be, and it has been, but it's very problematic because AP is extremely demanding.
I still haven't had a college class that was that hard.
Yeah.
To this day.
It's a tough class. Yeah. It's a college level class, and you've got to cover. A chapter.
A chapter a week.
A chapter a week and a test. Not a short test either.
Yeah.
And, you have to practice, and you have to have multiple choice and matching, but you have to have essay as well.
Part of the problem I had with it, though, was like, I didn't feel like I was actually learning.
You were working for the test. You were working for the test.
It was always working for the test. It was always about memorization. It was always about, distilling the terms and, the certain events. So you had these bullet points in your head that you could refer to when the test happened. But it was a little different in your class.
I would tell kids who would have an A in my class, go, look, you're going to cover at least one chapter of about 80 pages a week. And you're going to have a large test every week.
Thanks, Mr. Rod. I got A's in your class.
Yeah,
I got stuck with them.
And that's why I was trying to tell everybody is understand, AP US is not the same as regular US history or even honors world history.
Yeah.
And it's a brutal test. It's a very brutal test. And you have to go there, and if you complain about too much work, you don't belong in the class. Your only complaint should be, I'm not being challenged enough. And you don't hear that. You don't hear that.
I don't think anyone's ever said that about. Is Mr. Nelson still here, or did he leave?
No, he's at Notre Dame in the Valley, Sherman Oaks.
Another legend.
And
everybody loved Mr.
we talked. We texted over the holidays. I got to follow up with him. He wanted to get together, and I told him to get back to him. I haven't. I've been bad. But his wife works there, and his son goes to school there.
Okay.
And he lives. They relocated, I think, to. I'm not somewhere in the Valley. They relocated to the Valley, and so. For all you Mariners, remember Miss Sue Riggle, she passed away about a month ago, and
oh wow, I'm really
so
sorry.
there were services for her about 2 weeks ago.
Oh man!
And so she had a long illness, but she was a great lady. She loved St. Monica's, and if she knew you well at the attendance office, she'd call, okay, sweetie, no problem.
Oh yeah.
But if you were a kid who had an attitude,
she'd cut
you're
you
tardy.
slack.
You're tardy. Yeah. She
was a great lady.
She was a good lady.
Very kind.
Sue Riggle, great lady, great character. We had a great send-off to her, great memory. And Miss Ticka O'Neill and her children were responsible for that service. It was a great service. Saw some more Mariners there.
One of the other best classes I ever had was World Religions in Miss O'Neill's class. That was a great class.
Well, it's great because you get exposed to other religions other than Christianity,
exactly,
and Catholicism, and that's an eye-opener.
The only complaint I had was that the textbook was all about perceiving these religions through the eyes of a Catholic. I was like, no, give me the secular view. Like, I don't want them to say, oh, all of these other religions happen because they're misinterpreting what God is and they just got it wrong. It's like, guys, who are you kidding? Like, the Aborigines did not mistake the Christian God, the Judaic God Yahweh for, their goat god and their kangaroo god, all these other things. I'll never forget reading that intro. It's like, no, they just mistook these as aspects of God. Like, come on, guys. What are we doing here?
Well, you got to know, though,
but the class was
it's
great.
A huge change from when I was in school because at least we had comparative religions. Mm-hmm. And there wasn't anything like that. And it was very dogmatic. And we'd all been to grammar school, and it was very dogmatic. And our senior class was a class with seniors from about marriage. Mm-hmm. And you had a priest teaching it. And there was a classmate of ours who called Father Scott, good man, kind of said, Father, how can you talk about marriage if you've never been married? And this guy was great. His name was Vince Scipione. His daughter was Gloria Scipione. She won. She was part of the team that won the CIF.
Oh wow!
Do you remember that?
No, I don't.
The CIF championship.
I don't know if I was there for that. The championship for what?
Basketball. They won CIF.
Oh, of course I remember that. That was. Oh man, I remember that game.
Yeah,
that was incredible.
What grade were you in?
I think I was a sophomore when
that
happened. I was on the JV at that
Gloria
year.
was a freshman.
Yeah.
So her dad, Vince, was in my class.
Mm-hmm.
And so Vince was a guy that called Father Scott up. Vince was always doing stuff like that. Vince, if you ever see this, give me a call, man. I'm trying to reach you.